In this lesson, we'll incorporate an additional photographic element to be manipulated and used as the teeth of our fantasy character. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so now that we have the mouth reshaped and the tongue painted and textured, we're ready to start incorporating some nasty teeth into what will eventually be our concept of something that looks like a goblin or an orc, right? Let's go ahead and quickly refer back to our concept sketch that we created in Lesson 2, and you'll notice that I envisioned this bottom row of teeth as being very jagged. In fact, having 2 rows of teeth would be really cool, and then his upper teeth also being jagged and crooked, and some of them broken or even missing. So we're going to kind of shoot for that. So just again, kind of referring to that sketch, which really kind of provides us with a visual reference or roadmap to follow as we continue to really flesh out and evolve our concept here. The next thing you may have noticed actually in the previous lesson is that I grouped my neck layer into its own group. And that's because from here on out, we're really going to be doing a lot more than just using Liquify to make a lot of our manipulations or distortions. We're going to start incorporating a lot of textures and other photographic elements, and as a result, we can end up with just a lot more layers. And so from here on out, any areas of focus, we'll start grouping them. And this just allows me to keep my sanity and actually stay very organized as well. So you'll notice that I have another group here which I've titled Teeth. Let's go ahead and expand this. And it's within this group that I've duplicated our mouth layer and retitled it Teeth. Now, we're going to actually be using a photographic element to basically replace his teeth in here. We're going to be using some shark teeth. Now, I decided to keep his original teeth on the layer where I have the tongue basically built, just in case I ever want to come back to it. I could come back to our mouth layer, lasso this entire mouth section, and manipulate it to my liking. So it's just good to kind of preserve that information as we go, just in case we need it. So let's go ahead and turn on the visibility of our shark teeth layer. So here we have some really nasty, dangerous, sharp, great white shark teeth, okay? And so we're going to basically weave these teeth into his mouth. So the first thing we want to do is come over here to our layers panel, and let's reduce the opacity of this layer containing our shark teeth, all right? And let's go ahead and just drag that over where we want to place it into his mouth. And let's go ahead and hit Control-T on our keyboard to free transform these teeth. And we'll zoom in a little bit as well. So while we're in free transform mode, we can start to basically kind of reposition, reshape these overall teeth. And once we have these teeth approximately placed over the general opening of the mouth, let's go ahead and right click again, and we're going to select warp. And so this allows us to basically warp and skew these teeth to fit in the mouth, and we may want to go ahead and bring up our opacity just a little bit more, and I can use his original teeth as kind of a guide as well as to how I want to place his new and improved shark teeth. So that's feeling pretty nice. Let's go ahead and commit to these changes. We'll come up to our control panel, hit the check mark, and let's go ahead and bring up our opacity to 100%. All right, I think that'll work. We can always free transform again if we feel like we want to kind of reshape it even further. But overall, I think we have the overall position and placement where we want these teeth to be. Okay. Now let's go ahead and grab our eraser tool, okay? I'm going to go ahead and right-click, bringing up our brush preset picker. And let's just go with this soft round brush right here. We may want to size it down just a little. And then we'll come over to our brush panel. Let's turn on transfer and just making sure I have pen pressure for opacity and flow. And so now I'm just kind of coming around the edges of these teeth. I'm just kind of starting to set them into the mouth a little bit better. Just kind of revealing the lips, both upper and lower. So just trying to get the overall image placed into the cavity. And if we go a little bit too far there, we can always take a few steps back. All right. Now, obviously, I don't want to include all that water that's inside the shark's mouth. So let's go ahead, right-click again. We'll go with a hard round brush. And this time, let's just use shape dynamics, making sure I have pen pressure enabled to control size. And so this lets me control basically the size of my brush tip based off of the amount of pen pressure I apply using my Wacom stylus. So just kind of removing a lot of that information that we're just not going to need. And this basically reveals that tongue that we painted and textured in the previous lesson. So in this case, I preferred to create the tongue first. Just find it a little bit more manageable and easier to do the tongue first and then place any kind of overlapping information such as teeth second. All right, so I'm liking how this is coming along so far, how it's shaping up. Now you'll notice I have another layer which I've titled Paint Over. So let's go ahead and jump to that layer. We're going to start just doing a little bit of painting and start to just weave these teeth into the mouth. So let's go ahead and grab our brush tool. Let's go ahead and grab a hard round brush. This time we'll use transfer, all right? And so in our sketch, I mentioned that he was going to have some kind of broken upper jagged teeth, perhaps some even missing. So I'm just kind of sampling just from some different areas here. We may want to kind of remove some teeth. We may want to break up some teeth as well. Just kind of basically kind of sampling from some of that background dark information and then bringing that in over those teeth and just kind of starting to work with the shapes, kind of change them up. I want his upper teeth to look like they've had a lot of experience biting into different other characters or just a lot of food or hard objects. Basically kind of creating a little bit of a story and a little bit of visual history rather than having just some really nice, pristine, clean teeth. All right, so that's feeling pretty nice. We can also kind of come through down here and start to basically sample and kind of paint out any information that we don't need, any kind of additional water droplets, stuff like that. Now, eventually, towards the end of this course, we're going to come in here and start to really work in some fine details, such as some drool and spit, stuff like that, just kind of hanging from his teeth since he's got his mouth open. And again, the whole focus of really lowering his mouth is to really show off just his nasty inside of his mouth, okay? Now, what we might want to do at this point is go ahead and start to kind of set these teeth into the mouth just a little bit better. We want to kind of focus on the overall shadow. So just kind of sampling from kind of those darker areas. I'm kind of starting to think about kind of the foreshortening, how these teeth kind of set back into the mouth. Kind of focusing on the corners right now. Okay. And just kind of thinking about just kind of some of these shadows that we might start to have in here. And this is where it can get a little bit time consuming, where you could really spend an incredibly long amount of time just kind of going through, kind of focusing on shadows. We want his teeth here in the front to really be hit with a lot more light, given the light source, than these teeth in the far back. May want to actually bring in some white as well, just to these front teeth. And it's not to say that these teeth are going to be white in the final product. We may want to kind of make them look a little bit nasty, a little bit yellow. But we're just kind of starting to block in some information here. Basically kind of starting to think about just the overall lighting. And along the way, it's good to really just kind of zoom out, kind of look at the overall picture, and make a comparison. That's starting to come along really nicely. We're starting to really start to mold these teeth into the mouth. And we can start to kind of think of these teeth back here in the back, kind of just basically pulling off of those shapes of teeth. And just starting to kind of expand them. Again, we want him to have just some really nasty, sharp teeth that looks like they could do just a lot of damage. So now I'm just kind of thinking of some shadows that we could start to kind of weave in. Some kind of little faint recesses in the teeth that you sometimes have with really sharp teeth. We could even come up here and start to think about, again, just some little recesses that we would have in the teeth, some little fine lines that you often find in shark teeth. And again, just kind of thinking about the lighting as well. How is the lighting going to affect this teeth? What can we do to really start kind of set these teeth into the mouth just a little bit more? Kind of thinking about just any kind of shadows that we may have just from the lips over the top of the gums. And I really like how these gums feel very extended, very revealed, almost like a dog snarling where they show you their gums. And we can start to kind of sample from some of that kind of redder color in there and start to kind of work that into the mouth as well. Just kind of starting to think about that. And while we're at it, we can also start to kind of think about any kind of, little bright, wet spots that we may want to kind of start dabbing into the gums here and there. Again, just kind of trying to set them into the mouth, starting to kind of push the overall visual element. All right? Okay, so in the next lesson, we're going to shift gears and work our way back up towards the upper part of his head. We haven't really messed around with the upper part of his head in the past several lessons. And we're going to focus on the eyes. And if we refer back to our concept sketch, you'll notice how we spread the eyes really far apart. And again, that just adds to the whole element of basically pushing this creature into a realm that feels a lot less human, a lot less natural. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on in the next lesson. Is we're going to go back into Liquify and basically move those eyes apart and incorporate some sampling and some cloning from the surrounding areas of the eyes, just to kind of start setting them into the skull as we separate them outward. So stick around and we'll see you in the next lesson.